Hey guys, Dov here, back with another Lord highlight, and today we're taking a look at a very unusual pick. Very cool though, thanks to Glorious Feeder for sending this one in. Quick reminder, if you like the series, found it useful, give it a like, give it a share, would very much appreciate it. But anyway, let's get back to it. So this is the Dreadlord with sword and crossbow, leading the Ravens Heralds, the regiment of renowned Dark Riders with crossbows, who of course are riding Dark Pegasi. We've got a unit of Dark Riders with shields here, some Corsairs out in the open, it looks like a Fire Sorceress, some Sad Swords, the Hellebronis, Witch Elves, and 2 Blackguard, as well as 2 Doomfire Warlocks. Very interesting choice, including the Slaanesh Harvesters. Up against Norsca, we've got a wild Marauder Champion in the center, just regular Marauders flanking them. Looks like Wulfric the Wanderer, Famir, Sad Boy in the shadows. Skin Wolves, we've got Marauder Berserkers as well, some more Skin Wolves over here, some Javelin Cavalry. But yeah, actually, this is an interesting pick. The Dreadlord Sword and Crossbow is not one you see very often, but I actually think he's stealth pretty good. He does decent armor-piercing missile damage. It's not as much as somebody like Marcus or Luther, but it's solid, and given that he has a decent amount of ammunition and also can cast that little volley of dark arrows there, gonna make contact on Marauder champions with great weapons. Okay, all right. Yeah, but this guy's pretty good. He's pretty good. So on top of having, you know, this armor-piercing missile attack, he's also very solid in melee with 60 attack in particular, 400 weapon strength, 65 charge up on the Pegasus, 105 speed as well, means he's very mobile, and 90 armor. So just all around decent stats in combat. Not gonna, you know, break down any doors by any means, but definitely very serviceable. And he can sort of just fly around and skirmish a little bit here. And Norsca is a faction which they can take Manticores and Frostworms up in the air. Frostworms are not very good though, a bit situational at best. Maybe they'll be in this series in the future, and I'll say they're underrated, who knows. But yeah, the Manticores would potentially be a danger here, but of course, with good micro, the Ravens Heralds and the Dreadlord can stay out in front of the Manticore. So yeah, taking a look at the rest of the battle here, Word of Pain on these Skin Wolves. They're getting charged by various Doomfire Warlocks, and Doomfire Warlocks do not have Strider though. They will be suffering a little bit fighting in the woods, but some Halberds also following up. You can see the infantry starting to get engaged here, but the Skin Wolves getting a little bit out in front. Now they will of course take some regeneration and not get fully wrecked by that, but you can see here, yeah, these Blackguard of Nagrond took a lot of damage from that wind spell earlier, the Hellebroni also. So it's been some interesting back and forth. There's a big skirmish force here, so the Norscan player for now just kind of sitting back and using those missiles to good effect. You can see the Doomfire Warlocks start to get kind of crushed here a little bit. Some Famir would definitely completely wreck them. Famir do magic damage, and the Warlocks relying entirely on their physical resistance would be a bad day. The Ravens Heralds firing in here. They're trying to shoot at the Famir Sad Boy, and this Dreadlord Sword and Crossbow also just plinking back and forth everywhere. The Marauder Champions charge in. They actually will get a decent engagement. I meme about Marauder Champions being awful, and they are pretty terrible. Might even lose to these Blackguard, but they are going to get an engagement there. 30 charge as well is not too bad, so they should be able to do some okay damage on the charge. Nice Burning Head, rips up those Marauders, and we've got Witch Elves matched up on Berserkers, which the Berserkers would enrage anyway, and they'd probably win anyway, so this is not a great situation for the Wood Elves, or Witch Elves rather, in the woods. But they did just get Murderous Prowess, which picks them up to 56 melee attack. They're a little bit more comparable with the Berserker stats at that point. And yeah, Wulfric also getting bogged down by Sad Swords. Definitely a sad time for him. Sad Boy Famir also getting bombed from the sky by Marathi. Nice Doombolt. And the Ravens Heralds continuing to poke and prod and just be all mean. No wonder he's such a sad Famir. Nice volley of high arrows. Gonna come in, just about finish him off there. And the poor one-eyed Sad Boy is gone. And yeah, nice boat in the front line as well. Going to do some nice damage to the Witch Elves. They rout the Marauder Champions though, because champions are amazing. And over here, the Black Ark Corsairs do get completely cleaned up. There's a full health unit of Berserkers here pretty much, and a full health unit of Marauders. So looking a little bit dicey. This Dark Elf army is a little bit thin. I mean, granted, there is still also a full health unit of Blackguard here, so we'll see how that ends up turning out, but Wulfric's here, still surrounded by Sad Swords, getting poked by the air skirmish force. crossbows multi-shotting in, probably doing some nice friendly fire, but that's, you know, Dark Elves for you. But the Javelin Cavalry are still very much a danger here, and these Ravens Heralds are starting to run out of ammo. So they realistically cannot fight these Berserkers in melee in any way, shape, or form. He's definitely going to have to rely on, like, these Witch Elves and the Blackguards. Yeah, the Fire Sorceress here as well, of course, with Burning Head will be quite nice. Great job, though, with these Warlocks to kind of recover, chase some units off here. Maybe. Looks like they are thinking about chasing some units off, perhaps. A nice Burning Head, though. Does hit these Marauders a little bit. Hits the Berserkers a decent amount. And, yeah, at this point, the Crossbows finish off Wulfric. And now the question is, can they finish off all of this infantry as well? The Dark Elves are slightly ahead on the balance of power at this point. But the Dreadlord Sword and Crossbow, at the point where the Ravens Heralds have used up almost all their ammo, still has about half of his ammunition left. So he can plink away for quite some time. That is the nice thing about him, is he's got a good amount of ammo. I mean, I guess we can compare him to, like, Marcus and some other ranged characters after the fact. But definitely a selection of mounts, and one other thing about him as well that's not highlighted here, but is kind of neat. You can use him in melee while he's on the dragon. I believe in the air, he'll continue shooting while he's in melee. So a little bit weird. You probably don't want him fighting air to air against someone more powerful than him anyway in melee, like a Carl or, you know, Imric or something. But if you're fighting a lower tier air combatant, like maybe just even Boris or I don't know, a Glady, you could potentially use that combo, get good work done in melee, unless they fixed it, I don't know. But a nice fireball there, kind of hits the Cav Blob. The Marauder Horsemen are mostly out of ammo at this point, but you can see that Blackguard ended up taking a lot of damage from that focus fire, and at this point it's just going to come down to last stand of the Norskins, more or less. The thing is, though, as they continue to make their last stand, since their javelins are gone, they really don't have any way to get at the Dreadlord up in the air now. And, yeah, Slaanesh Harvesters routing off some Marauder Horsemen in the distance. These other Doomfire Warlocks coming back. They have magic attacks and poison, so could actually get a decent charge on these Berserkers, but it looks like they are wanting to avoid that engagement, which is probably smart as well. They will take a lot of damage there, but it's interesting to note that the crossbows here do function similar to other ranged heroes in that they almost appear to be like artillery bolts. Yeah, kind of hard to see, but you will see when he unleashes his crossbow there. Makes a nice little explosion. I don't know if it actually has explosion damage, but I don't know, I'd have to do testing if it's on the ground. See, I believe it will pass through multiple models. Let's see if we can see that here. Another Doom Bolt coming down. Did I say from Marathi earlier? It was definitely from the Doomfire Warlocks. Obviously, Marathi's not here. You know, I'm just so used to Marathi being on the field, but that's one of the reasons why you don't see this guy too much, or other, you know, generic Dark Elf characters. The East Master, also one I'm planning on covering eventually. You see mostly either Supreme Sorceresses or, you know, either Malekith or Marathi. Less so Malekith these days, but occasionally still. But even after all this, things are still very, very close, almost pulling back towards even. The Berserkers are getting finished off at this point, but the Ravens Heralds had to dive down into combat, try and trigger a rear attack penalty, and they just get completely shredded here. You can see earlier how I was saying they just cannot fight this. Just not even. The Blackguards definitely can fight this, though. They're going to hold the line, continue to even chase here. All this time, the Dreadlord's continuing to throw bolts. A few more Blackguard also recover their leadership. They're on their way back, so what looked to be a pretty decent push for Norsca, trying to take things back. Starting to run out of steam a little bit. They do finish off those Doomfire Warlocks, but at this point, the Dreadlord can start to use his melee prowess a little bit. I mean, these are just Marauder Horsemen after all. They will still get some pretty solid damage and even gain a Chevron there, charging in melee. I mean, 24 charge bonus is solid, but of course they can't stay in combat too long with these Blackguard around, and there's still some ammo left on the crossbow. Keep plinking. We'll fast forward a little bit as Glorious Feeder finishes out the round. But essentially at this point, the Raven's Heralds being here, all things being considered, there's not a lot of hope for these Marauder Horsemen. They are going to give it their best try and even trigger losing combat here momentarily for the Blackguard. But with the presence of the Lord nearby, the Blackguard are going to be basically unbreakable. And while the Marauder Horsemen, just through sheer weight of numbers, have done some damage here, it's really not going to be enough at the end of the day. And that massive melee attack as well basically not quite guarantees hits with the Dreadlord, but I mean, he's a good enough melee combatant where this is going to be no joke, him providing these extra splash attacks in this combat. A nice job by him, mostly staying up in the air using unchivalrous missile weapons. But eventually, you know, typical Dark Elf, once the fight is well in his favor, then he charges in to finish you off. Yeah, very fun stuff. Big thanks again to Glorious Feeder for that one. It's one I want to experiment a little bit earlier, and I believe he had a couple of abilities there as well I forgot to check up on. But yeah, Blackguard did a great job. 102 kills also on the Witch Elves. Quite nice. Nice kills on the Doomfire Warlocks also. It can be a little bit tricky to use these guys well because they're so squishy, but did a great job here. Wolfric and the Sad Boy Fmir getting sniped was definitely an issue, and I think also getting too much early damage on these Skin Wolves could have potentially cost this Norscan player the game. Thick, red, and delicious. Marauder Champions also meme pick at best. I mean, they'll trade okay against the Blackguard, but even then, you're better off to just go with other things. But anyway, let's go ahead and finish up with the Dreadlord. Sword and crossbow. So he's got quite a mount selection. You can take him on the cold one as well, which on the ground gives him armor piercing and melee. Decent melee attack, like I said. Not the best melee defense, but 115 armor, 68 speed is relatively slow, though. On the Dark Steed, he goes up to 92 speed, still 90 armor, 60 attack, 55 charge. It's decent. He's a little bit vulnerable, though. Taking him up in the air, especially in certain matchups, means that you know, if you can guarantee yourself air superiority, if you're going to guess your opponent won't bring air units, then it can be completely safe. Or you go all the way up to the Dragon, which does make him quite expensive. Base cost is 2,300, which is on par with some of the other Dragon Lords we've seen recently. Keeping in mind, though, that he's not a caster and Lord in one. So, with that, let's go ahead and compare him to, I guess the most direct comparison would be to the other Elf Bow Lords on Dragons. So the Princess can go all the way up to Star, but Moon is on the same power level. And let's also cut her abilities. And the Glade Lord, realistically, and the Glady, I think are the same base cost. I don't think it matters. So 2,200, 2,200, 2,300. So it is the most expensive of the three. That being said, though, armor piercing, as I mentioned, with the missile attack, 520 weapon damage, slightly better stats baseline than the Princess, and definitely better stats than the Glade Lord, other than charge bonus. Glade Lords do, Forest Dragons do poison and magic damage, though, and they also have physical resistance to help make up for the armor and health deficiency. So, you know, it's tough to say which is better, but in total, you know, is the poison worth that? Potentially. I mean, poison is a very, very strong mechanic, but they also, again, 10 less ammunition, and while they do technically do more missile damage overall, let's check the AP values here. 140 times 2, that's 280, only 84 here, and only, yeah, 80 here. So the Princess definitely quite a bit lower in terms of missile output, and the extra ammunition over the Glady is definitely an advantage. Same amount of ammunition as the Princess. Shortest range, obviously, as it is a crossbow, but being that he's flying, you can definitely get him into a position to use it as long as you're shutting down enemy missile units. And I guess that means, like, Chaos, Norsca are obviously going to be good ones. If you believe that your opponent, you know, isn't going to go in the air as vampire counts because they're too scared, then potentially it's a good pick there as well. And perhaps a few others, but in general, I would say, like I said, air to air, if you're not expecting a top tier combatant, you can use him on the Black Dragon, assuming they didn't fix it. Speaking of Black Dragon, he also has this, does he not have the Black Dragon egg? Oh no, I'm thinking of someone else. Pearl of Infinite Darkness gives immune to psychology and leadership in an AoE. This is not super critical, as most, I mean, your Blackguard are already immune to psychology anyway. You You know, maybe you want it for some of these other units that rely on frenzy, but generally, since you have pretty good leadership, it's not as important for Dark Elves not to get terror routed, but it's there. They do have that. The volley of dark arrows we saw is pretty good and loose if you want extra reload skill for your crossbows. It's okay to have. It's tough to reliably keep him near. Like, even in that replay, we saw he ended up getting separated from the Raven's Heralds for a decent amount of time. So if I'm not the biggest fan of taking loose on either of the elf characters, bow characters, because of that. Like, you end up having a hard time keeping them in range of your other ranged units. I mean, obviously it'll benefit him slightly. Maybe there's an argument to be made for that, but it's a pretty small effect to pay, especially on elven factions, which you generally need to min-max your cost as much as possible. But it is there. We've also got this, which is 20% armor piercing missile damage buff, only 18 seconds, but this is something because it's activatable, you can use it on a timing. I actually could see this being pretty good. I've never used it myself. I'm not going to lie, I've maybe used this Lord once or twice in multiplayer myself. I always, not always, occasionally though, I'll see other people bust it out as a bit of a wild card pick, and it's always a good time. So definitely consider the Dreadlord Sword and Crossbow. I don't have a fun nickname like Nolosi, but have to find one of the campaign characters who is one of these guys. And yeah, let me know in the comments down below who that should be. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.